The video that you are about to watch was filmed the day before the US presidential election. Needless to say, I was pretty stressed out and nervous about everything that was going to happen the next day. That is why I may look like I'm having brain fog in this video. I also did not say what I wanted to actually say in this video about health anxiety. Essentially, though, what you need to know is if a doctor tells me that doing something that I'm doing is negatively impacting my health, I'm probably going to stop doing it, with the exception of social media and caffeine, because I'm pretty much addicted to both of those things, and I'm kind of shameless about it, honestly. Mainly, I am afraid of intensive medical intervention, and I want to try to avoid it at all costs. Obviously, there are the things that are completely out of our control, like our genes, for example. And thinking about that does scare me because cancer, diabetes, and heart disease do run in my family. I didn't really say all of that in the next part of this video. That's also why I didn't post this video when I was supposed to, because I wasn't happy with how it turned out, and also I was just in turmoil last week. I hope you enjoy. In the second emotional check-in video ever, I have a new microphone to show you guys. This is a Kawai microphone. Also, I apologize if my phone shakes. It is on kind of a flimsy tripod. Anyway, in this emotional check-in, I'm going to be discussing health anxiety. I thought that I wouldn't discuss any current events because today is Monday, the day before Election Day. I wanted to go ahead and film this now before the election actually starts, or before Election Day actually starts, because I know that I'm going to be really anxious on that day. I am the type of person where if a doctor tells me not to do something because it could potentially negatively impact my health in the future, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to immediately stop. An example of this, and I know I mentioned that I had celiac disease in my last emotional check-in video, but it is something pervasive that affects me every day. It affects what I can eat and can't eat. So I think about it a lot because I have to, not necessarily because I want to. I really would not recommend anyone go gluten-free unless you absolutely have to, because it's not fun and you don't necessarily lose weight just from going gluten-free either. Anyway, I was completely asymptomatic when I was randomly diagnosed with celiac disease. It actually showed up on a blood panel that my doctors gave me. I was in middle school and I paid attention to my health because I already had one food allergy, but then suddenly they were testing me for celiac disease, which I had never heard of before, and I didn't have any digestive symptoms for. But after they explained what it was, the damage that it does to your body over time, and the risk of cancer in the future if you don't go gluten-free. That's only if you have celiac disease, by the way. I don't think that that's a thing if you're just gluten intolerant. After all of that, I decided that I was going to follow the diet to the best of my ability because I've always been afraid of invasive medical intervention, whether that's major surgery or some sort of invasive treatment. I've always been one to really want to avoid that at all costs. I would also say that I have been almost close to being orthorexic in the past. Not necessarily that I've completely avoided junk food, but I try to limit it a lot because I focus on my health so much. I was also on Tumblr when the internet was truly the wild, wild west in the 2010s, and I noticed that there was a trend of ED-focused accounts. Although I didn't really restrict my diet or my calories in that way, I do remember thinking a lot about weight loss in my teens. What kept me from restricting my diet so much was actually my food allergies, kind of ironically. Just because I did want to be in control of what I ate, and I didn't want an outside source or body dysmorphia or eventually treatment and some psychologist telling me what I could eat because so much of my diet was already restricted. Now to a potentially more controversial part of the video. In middle school, I thought a lot about specifically heart disease and how I did not want to have heart problems, how heart problems and breathing problems specifically made me anxious to think about people having them because of the invasive ways that medicine recommends intervening when the situation gets dire. I don't want to say that I ever really followed the traditional standard American diet because of my food allergies, but I followed something pretty similar to that for most of my life until I went to college. But in middle school, when I was researching prevention specifically for heart disease, I learned that especially animal agriculture, not only the negative effects of animal agriculture on the environment, but also on people's health. If you over-rely on factory farmed meat, especially red meat, your risk of heart disease basically skyrockets, especially in America. I've never liked the way that we as Americans commodify red meat. A hamburger is a product, and a lot of people are really into eating the biggest burger or ordering multiple hamburgers in one meal for one sitting for one person. This is detrimental to health over time. One person is not meant to consume an entire cow. Traditionally, an animal that size was meant to feed a family or a tribe. And the way that we commodify animals is not healthy. It's selfish at best. In middle school, this was when I originally learned about veganism. I can't say that that was the first time that I had ever heard of someone who didn't eat meat, because I watched That's So Raven growing up, and Chelsea was vegetarian. I thought that that was kind of cool because I was dairy-free, and we both had different diets than like the normal American diet. So I bonded with Chelsea. Although she had morals attached to why she didn't eat meat, and I had science as a reason why I can't have most dairy products. But still, somehow I could relate to Chelsea. After that, I felt like it was pretty cool to be dairy-free because I could somehow vaguely connect it to ethics. It was for the cows, but it was also sort of for my health. Well, especially for my health, because it was literally life and death. And it probably will be until the day that I die, because I actually have a really rare medical condition that is not anaphylaxia. Celiac disease is more challenging for me because I have to be so strict about cross-contamination, where I don't have to be as strict with my dairy allergy, ironically. Even though, theoretically, eating small amounts of dairy for an extended period of time would be deadly to me faster than consuming gluten over an extended period of time, because celiac disease damages your small intestines, but that doesn't kill you right away or even within a decade. But your odds of getting cancer in the future are skyrocketed, like even more than if you consumed processed red meat for every day for a decade. It's even more than that. Anyway, when I learned about veganism, or at least cutting back on animal agriculture-based meats, and the health benefits of that, that was something that I was immediately interested in. It made sense to me, and it had science to back it up. So that was a goal of mine that I had ever since I was in middle school, but it was hard for me to cut out land animals because of my food allergies, but also because I grew up in the Southeast, where meat and farming are huge things. If you don't eat beef or meat in general, then everyone's gonna comment on you getting enough protein. It's just a thing that's a part of Southeastern United States culture. At that point in time in middle school, when I realized that it was a goal of mine to really eat for my health and the environment's health. When I got to college, I became pescatarian pretty easily. I will say that to this day, and even the first year that I cut out most meat, most land meat, I am not 100% pescatarian. That is mostly because of my food allergies. This next part is probably even gonna be controversial for those who do have a plant-based diet. But as someone with food allergies, as someone who has sat across the table from a medical professional who has told me that I can no longer eat a lot of my favorite foods when I was in middle school, I think a lot about injecting joy back into eating, and a part of that for me is actually eating foods that are not plant-based, that contain animals. For me, I don't necessarily enjoy that process, except with seafood, but seafood has always been one of my favorite foods. It's something that would be really hard for me to give up as someone who is both gluten-free and dairy-free. But sometimes I think about the experience of eating the food. Like, for example, for me, pizza. Pizza is one of the very few exceptions that I make to no red meat. It is because gluten-free pizza has a really dry crust, and you probably wouldn't understand unless you were gluten-free yourself. It's just gross. There was a while when I actually tried to eat vegetarian even on pizza, because where I live, at least, seafood is not really a common topping for pizza. I know that in Europe, that's definitely different. That's something that I would really enjoy trying, but unfortunately, I don't really have a whole lot of opportunities to do that where I live. Gluten-free pizza crust, especially if it doesn't have cheese, because a lot of restaurants, especially around where I live, again, do not have dairy-free cheese. So, if it's a dry, gluten-free pizza crust, it needs something on it that has juice. And vegetables do not really do a good job of moistening the gluten-free crust. I do eat pepperoni on pizza. That is not necessarily something that I'm ashamed of. And until there is a plant-based pepperoni that is pretty equivalent to the texture of regular pepperoni that is available in most restaurants, that's not necessarily something that I'm going to feel bad about. I never really claimed that I was 100% plant-based or 100% pescatarian, and that's why you see my issue. Obviously, most salads are gluten-free, and they can be dairy-free with a few modifications, but honestly, I hate lettuce and I hate tomatoes, so I'm never gonna be a big salad person. That's just not necessarily for me. And again, I think about joy in food a lot as someone with food allergies, as someone who had the experience of having to cut out a lot of foods in middle school when I already had one other food allergy. So yeah, I have health anxiety about a lot of different things when it comes to my own future and the future of those that I care about. I'm honestly not really sure how to move past that, but I try to take everything a day at a time for myself. Mindfulness will help. ASMR honestly helps me. That's one reason why I occasionally post ASMR on this channel, just because it has helped me in the past calm down, and I want to give back to that community. If something unexpected, especially medically, pops up in my own life, I just try to go through the process as calmly as possible, just live through it, and not necessarily tits my body up so much, because I feel like with anything doctor related, the more that you tits up your body, the worse it's gonna feel. Honestly, I can't say that I have any healthy advice to give for this particular emotion, but if you have also dealt with health anxiety and if you have any advice, please let me know. Also, let me know if you like this microphone. I'm only going to use it pretty much for emotional check-in videos, I think. Anyway, stay beautiful.